Welcome to the MFS Wellness Podcast, a hybrid structure encompassing health, fitness, self-improvement, and entertainment, where no topic is off limits and all opinions are graciously welcomed.
Let's get on with the show!
And now, here's the host of the show, Mike Sinopoli.
This is the MFS Wellness Podcast. I am Mike Sinopoli, and today we are discussing a very sensitive topic, one that I'm not necessarily qualified to attempt to diagnose nor cure, and that topic is disordered eating. A lot, if not all, of our eating habits and choices, they sort of stem from some sort of conditioning, from trauma or a reaction or to a feeling. And this can lead to a lot of different types of disorders. So to gain a better understanding of this, I have brought on a guest, one who has survived several phases of disordered eating and is now a personal trainer herself. She is my good friend. Her name is Yolie. Yolie, how are you?
I am good, Mike. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, of course. It's a pleasure. And before we get started, I wanted to thank you because you have been a outstanding supporter of this show and of what I have done. You share it, you've commented on it, and we've talked back and forth about just doing this together, and you have a lot to offer. You put out a lot of good information yourself, so thank you for being here, and I appreciate all of that.
Thank you, Mike.
Of course. So, getting into this now, we're talking about surviving disordered eating, and we're going to get into your story in a second. But as far as disordered eating goes, most of us, we know the most common types. And I was on a website out here. It was just on Healthline, I believe. And they have the 6 main types of disordered eating. And the most common is anorexia. So I think we're familiar with that one. That's basically where you just kind of don't eat, right? Is that basically it? Or it's very minimal eating? Was that how you would describe anorexia?
You're pretty much starving.
Yeah, it's just a starvation, and it has a lot to do with feeling like you are possibly looking at your body. You're probably very slender and slim, but you still see yourself as overweight. I think that's so. I think anorexia kind of lends itself a little bit to that body dysmorphia as well. So that's where it all kind of ties together. We got bulimia as well, which is basically eating, binge eating even sometimes, and then purging. All over the place. We know that. And then binge eating disorder itself is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where we just kind of consistently are just gorging and eating and lack control. So that's kind of the opposite side. A few of the lesser known ones, one that's kind of common that a lot of people don't even know they have, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. So that's more or less, how would you describe that sort of, that's sort of like where you're just very meticulous about your eating and you're almost obsessing over it?
And it's funny because a lot of people with anorexia, when you start healing, you kind of go right into that one because you're constantly watching exactly what you're eating and your calories to see how much you're actually eating. And you're trying to get better, but usually that can either help you move forward or it can actually bring you back. But
right.
You are so meticulous about what you put on your plate, what's going in your mouth, and what you're burning after.
Right. And as a trainer and me as a nutrition coach, because I know we each kind of probably touch each other's own, specialty there, where you're probably doing some nutrition talk yourself. I think this is one I should probably kind of educate myself on a little bit more, just because, this is something that if you give a person a meal plan and they have this mentality, this very perfectionist mentality, this type A, they can go ahead and you can kind of be feeding their eating disorder if you're giving them too much of a meticulous plan. Would you say?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think that's the one thing, and I know hate's a big word, but I hate when people post on Instagram, their actual meals throughout their day, because I feel like that could actually trigger somebody. I mean, I know when I first started and I would see that, I would be triggered and I would sometimes actually think that they were lying about how much they were eating. And I would try and eat that way and it didn't suit my lifestyle. So then I would do other stuff that, which we'll be talking about. But yeah, I actually don't like that because a lot of people get triggered so easily by something like that.
Yeah, it's a tough perception to do. And if we're not in the right mindset, no matter who's trying to be helpful on social media, it really just comes down to a two-way street, right? It's just how you project it out there, how you put it out there, and how it's received and how it's perceived and how it's taken in. So I hear what you're saying there. And then two other ones, which I'm sure we're not going to talk too much about on the show, but I found them interesting. I actually sort of learned about them today. You seem to have had previous knowledge of pica.
Yeah.
And that is described as individuals who crave non-food substances such as ice, dirt, soil, chalk, soap, paper, hair, cloth, wool, pebbles, laundry detergent, or cornstarch. Wow, those are some crazy examples. I've never had anything like that or seen that. Have you? Have you known anyone?
No. But it's funny when you are, when you're anorexic and you go to the doctors, they do ask you that. And that's how I know about it. Because they're like, do you have pica? It's like, nope.
There was a show.
I don't have that.
There was a show, and I can't remember the name of the show. It was years ago, maybe a decade or so. And there was like people who had weird food addictions.
Yeah.
One guy was eating dryer sheets. And I was like, this is phony. They're just doing this to pop a rating. They're just trying to pop a rating. I said, maybe there is some truth to it. Maybe I was just a raging skeptic to it all. And then rumination disorder. This was a new one to me as well. And this sounds very unpleasant. So this is described as a condition in which a person regurgitates food they've previously chewed and swallowed, rechews it, and then either reswallows or spits it out. So I don't understand that one, but that seems to be another one that's out there. I guess it's just mental in the brain. I don't know. So that's those are the main ones that we have here. So, but we just wanted to lay the groundwork out there. Well, and what we're here for is to kind of discuss if you do have one of these. First of all, the best thing to do if you think you have an eating disorder before we get started here, seek out professional help. Okay. We can't save you on this podcast. We can talk about it. We can give information. Yolie can tell her story and you can learn from that. But, even when as a nutrition coach, if I sense disordered eating of any sort, I can't help with that by law. Basically, I'm not qualified. So that has to be done by a certified in that field. So seek that out. Take what you hear a grain of salt. Ask us questions. I'll give Yolie's contact at the end. But Yolie, just go ahead and get started and tell us, where did it begin for you? Where did you first start feeling strange around food, different around food, or where did it come from that this all began?
So it started when I was very young. I was 8, maybe 9, and my mom would constantly watch me every time I would go to the refrigerator or every time I was eating something. And she would, make a few faces letting me know, like, oh, you're eating too much, or, you need to stop. And if I went to the fridge again, she would be like, oh, you're going back for more. But she was letting me know in a tone that what I was doing was wrong. So that's initially how it started. And at the time, you're a kid, you really have no idea. You're just kind of thinking your parents, watching you. And as I got older and entered middle school, that's when it fully started, because my mom would start nitpicking at things and picking at my body. So if I wore shorts, she made a comment once to let me know that I had cellulite and that I was too young to have that. And it was because of how I was eating. And that automatically triggered it. So I stopped eating. And if I ate, I would hide food under, I would try and hide it somehow, like under a napkin, under whatever was near me in my pockets. And then I would throw it in the trash. And when I went to school and it was time for lunch or snack, we were getting lunch for free. And I would either get it and give it to someone who didn't have lunch, or I would throw it in the trash, just so my mom could see that I was, getting lunch. And it just became something that became mentally addicting at that time. And I started to lose weight. I started to hear her, compliment me and say, oh, wow, whatever you're doing, it's working. Middle school's good for you. You lost some weight. And that kept going all up to, I want to say, my freshman and sophomore year. I was healthy. I started eating again. And the weight started to creep back up. And then she started to nitpick again. And then anorexia entered full blown. And I stopped eating. I was walking. I would do whatever I could to get more information on how to diet, on what not to eat. And little by little, even after that, I developed bulimia. And a lot of people don't know about that. A lot of people know about my anorexia days, but they don't know that I was also suffering from bulimia. And I've kept that to myself. This is the first time I'm really opening up about it to a lot of people, not just you. And it took over my life for, I don't know, maybe 5 years.
Wow.
A good 5 years. And I would go out with friends and family and nobody knew what was going on. People would ask if I was okay, that I looked sick. I would hear comments behind my back from family members telling my mom, what's going on with her? Like, you can see her bones. She doesn't look healthy. But to my mom, it almost didn't faze her. It was like, oh, she looks fine. She's,
Right.
She's a teenager.
Mhm.
But to everybody else, it became very alarming.
Oh.
And I was not okay.
Yeah.
I was slowly dying inside physically and mentally because I couldn't think about anything other than how am I going to throw this food out? How am I going to hide this food so I can throw it in the trash? Or if I eat it, am I going to have time to go to the bathroom, stick my finger down my throat and throw everything back out?
Wow.
Because that's initially what I had to do.
Wow.
And it started to consume me so much that I had to time my meals to make sure that, will my grandma be home? When is my mom coming home? Who's going to be around? Because if I can't let this out, I'm going to lose my mind.
And that's very unsettling, and that's an uncomfortable way to live. And that's just, it's food, but it's using up your mind and your brain, and it's creating an uncomfortable setting for you to be living in. Therefore, that food disorder is taking over your entire life. And then to go ahead and ask a question with your mom and her comments that she was making, to go back to that. How many siblings do you have? Or was it just you she was doing that to, or?
Just me. So she had a great relationship with my sister, and she actually never went through any of that. My sister was able to eat chips. She could eat whatever she wanted. She was naturally thin. And my mom was like, oh, eat some more. And I remember sitting there thinking, wait, why is she letting her eat that? But if I have a bag of chips, she's going to look at me and tell me, like, where that's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm eating a burger, she'd be like, ooh, love handles. Nobody likes that.
Now, were you firstborn? Were you the oldest?
No, I had a brother, an older brother.
Oh, so you had an older brother. You're the middle child?
Yes.
Okay, and then you have a younger sister.
And a younger sister.
What's the age gap between all of you guys about?
Me and my brother, 3, my sister, 4.
Okay, so not too far off. So I just try to wonder, the reason I ask is because I always try to pinpoint behaviors. Not that I'm like some sort of behavioral therapist or anything, but it's like, why though? Like, I always ask why. I'm a questioner. I question everything. Like, what brought her to, not do that to your brother, and then your younger sister didn't really have that either. She got to think, because that's not good behavior as a parent. It's just not. It's damaging. And what happened in that realm? You were the first girl born, so maybe I don't know, maybe she had something in her life that she's wanted to relate. So she had her first, or you're her first daughter overall, right? She has no other kids anywhere else. So, I don't know. So do you think there's anything from your mom that that traumatized her at some point, or that gave her an outlook, and she was just projecting something to you that you feel that?
So I've been asking myself that question for a very long time. I've asked my therapist, and I mean, Mike, I've written down a ton of questions for myself, trying to figure out, was it, did she not like my dad? Some people would say like, oh, it's because she didn't like your dad. We all have different fathers. So I thought it might have been because of him. Then I started wondering that something happened to her growing up, like what was going on, because it wasn't like my mom was a thin or fit woman. She was, she was average. She was just a regular sized person. And I really have no idea. And she never shared anything. So we grew up in a household where you couldn't share your emotions. You couldn't talk about what you were dealing with. If you cried, you had to suck it up and move on, and you are stronger than that. If we needed to find a way to do something, she would let us know that there was a way and that we were strong, independent women and we didn't need any help. So that was the household that I grew up in. And it was very toxic because for many years, I kept all my emotions bottled in. When my brother passed away, I couldn't cry. I wanted to be strong because I thought that's what she needed. Then in the future, she blamed me for not crying for my brother. And
Oh boy.
I kept thinking, well, I was raised with you telling me that that's a sign of weakness, that we shouldn't be crying, that I should hold my emotions. We don't cry for anybody. And if I remember I had a boyfriend and he broke my heart in high school. And I remember crying. She had no idea. And oh my goodness, did she let me have it? It was really bad. And I just grew up realizing I can't show emotion. If I need help, I can't go to her. So during my anorexic years and bulimia years, I knew that I couldn't go to her for help. That whatever I was dealing with, I just had to find a way out on my own, which that's what I did.
And that's unfortunate because, you could maybe pin that together with the eating disorder. And, when you can't express your emotions in a certain way, we turn to different things to cope. When you have to hold an emotion in, that's just where the vices come in. Sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's body image, it's OCD, it's something else. And a lot of this stuff just seems to trickle back down to, the root being, it all goes back to lineage, right? I think, because I could say that the way that your mom was treating you, which I don't agree with at all, which is unfortunate, and I'm sorry that happened to you, but the way that is, something happened to her in her youth, or maybe she was brought up in a sense of not showing emotions, and that's what she knows, and that's just this toxic way, like you said, of this generational trauma that gets passed down and results in these types of disorders. So with that being said, how did you go back to where we were? So we kind of don't know, right? We don't know why mom is the way she is. We just don't know. She's never gone to therapy, probably never will. It takes a realization to go to therapy and look at yourself and see, okay, something's up with me. What's going on here? Most people in that generation, they don't have that. They're stuck in their own just bubble that they've lived in. And it's way too long. So given that, we're not going to know that. We're not going to determine that here. But going forward, so now you're up into the middle school, high school times, and this is where you're high school, and this is where you're starting to be, you're already anorexic for a little bit. Now you're going in
right into
bulimia. So was it kind of like a hop up back and forth type thing to where like the anorexia sort of got so uncomfortable that you just needed to eat, but then once you ate, you would feel guilt and shame and panic and purge?
So the way it happened and the back and forth with both of them were, I was able to control when I wasn't eating, but then, I come from a Hispanic family, so you eat up, you eat at parties, you eat wherever you go. And my grandma she would always cook for us. And I would come home from school and it's like, okay, there's your lunch. And I was like, oh, I don't want to eat it. So anxiety would start to build up and I would eat it. And then I would tell her like, oh, I think we need to buy something from the store. So she would be like, oh yeah, let me go get it. And she would go to the store and I would have everything come out. So there was moments where I was struggling with both eating disorders at the same time because I was able to control what I ate at school, which was nothing. And then I would come home and eat and then have to get everything back out. And it was just completely, it was awful. I remember the only year that I didn't have anything was my senior year.
Okay.
And that's because I started smoking pot.
Okay.
And I was hanging out with just the guy I was dating. He was selling. And, I was hungry. And
Yeah.
I was happy. I was in a relationship. Everything just felt great.
That'll do that.
Even though I would come home and my mom tried to, shit all over my happiness. But at that moment, I really didn't care. I had a plan, I had an exit plan, and I told myself, I am moving out as soon as
Mhm.
I am done with school. And sure enough, I was told I wasn't going to graduate if I didn't get my grades up. So I had to cut back on everything and I had to focus on getting my grades up to graduate because I told myself, I am not going to give her this. She already expects me to do bad in everything in life. She wants me to fail at a lot of things. I will not give her this satisfaction of, well, you should have done better. I didn't want to hear that.
Mhm.
So I got my shit together and I passed. I
Good.
graduated, and even then she wasn't happy.
Mm-mm.
Even
It-
then she did not care. It was like, oh, congratulations, that's good.
you were in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario, and what a hard situation that's in when somebody that you're supposed to look to be like the ultimate safety net, the go-to person in your life, and boy, and we'll touch on that later on and what we're on how that all just kind of comes full circle. But so you start, you said you got through it senior year and everything like that. So at what point, like through that, like outside of just smoking pot, which we all know is an appetite stimulant, and it's a good thing for some people to take that. I agree with it. I've dabbled myself in that, and the appetite is real. And that can help somebody with an eating disorder, I would say, and it clearly did for you. So then you graduate, so you're
Yeah.
you're good. You're eating again. It sounds like you're sort of like ready to go, break free of your mom's whatever this is she's got over you here and she's trying to put onto you. So then you go, what happens then? Because it doesn't sound like that's the end of your story with disorder eating. It sounds like
Just the beginning.
it's just the beginning. So
Yeah.
so you graduate. Now what happens with the relationship from high school? Does that fall apart or does that
It falls apart completely. So I leave because she continues to treat me a certain way. And she starts blaming friends for, me being thin. So I stayed for a little bit. I got really skinny again. I started starving and then I started working out, but it was cardio. So I would run, I would eat, and then I would go for a run. And I lost a lot of weight. And as you know, when you run, you're burning so much.
Mhm.
And I made sure I burned everything. I mean, I was so thin. I My face, Mike, I mean, I look sick. I look
Mhm.
very sick. You can see the bones on my neck. It just everywhere. It was really bad. And she was happy again. To her, that was a good thing that I was thin. So when I went to a party and stuff happened, she did save my life that night, but she blamed everything on my eating disorder, and that
Mm.
wouldn't have happened to me if I would have known better, if I would have been smarter, if I would have been more cautious. And sorry, give me a
Oh,
sec.
no, you take your time. If you need a minute, it's all good. These are tough stories to tell. These are, this is somebody here is putting their entire life out there, wanted a platform to talk about it, knows a lot about it, and wants to share their stories. So, with these times come great emotions, and that's okay. That's our you're letting her out now. You weren't allowed to at one point,
Yeah,
so this is a place where you can let them out. I'm not.
yeah,
I'll never be one. Hey, you say what you got to do. You cry if you got to cry. If you got to, yell, scream, say whatever you got to do. That's okay. And I'm a big mouth, so I'm here to fill the voids. You know,
yeah.
that's one thing. That's one thing about being a loudmouth that doesn't shut up. If you need a minute, I can talk. I can just kind of ramble around.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So you
But she blamed it on that. And I remember, my uncle was there, he was worried, my grandma was worried, my sister was worried, my cousin was there. Um, and she was happy that I was okay, that I was safe. But oh man, like the look in her face when I, gained conscious, she just gave me this look of like, I can't believe you, like this is you. Like she gave me this look of like disgust, kind of like she didn't care. And And that was my ticket out. And I knew right then and there that I was not going to live through that. So I remember leaving. She was sad. She cried. She made a huge scene and, you know, said that she was going to change and she was sorry, which I knew it was just to keep me there and have control. So I moved in with my aunt, and because I was so upset with how everything happened and everything went down and with that traumatic event that happened at that party, she man, we stopped talking. And I was happy about that, but also sad because it's your mom.
Oh yeah.
You know, as a girl, you want that relationship with your mother, and to not have it and to never have it, or know that you were never going to have it after that, that became very hard.
Oh yeah.
So I moved in with my aunt, and she liked eating out so much that I packed on a little bit of weight, and I didn't like it, and everything started to come out again. So she worked a lot. I was in college at the time, and what I would do was I would eat. She had a lot of junk food at the house, so I would eat whatever she had, and then everything came back out again. And then I would go to college. I was dancing at the time, not stripper dancing.
That's strip dancing. Just
I was
regular dance, like standard
I was
dancing.
doing modern dance and jazz, not the other kind.
Mhm.
So I'd go and dance, and I would let out my emotions through dance. And it was like my only happy place. And then I got married young, and it turned out to be another shitty situation, which didn't help my eating disorder a lot, because once we moved in, he was in the military, so he was gone a lot. He was deployed. And during the time he was gone, I would eat and I would starve and I would let everything out and I would go dance and work out. So I was very thin, you know, and very unhealthy. And I had nobody that really cared around, no one that really was looking out for me or telling me like, hey, you got to eat something. And it was just, you know,
It
this.
got pretty lonely then.
Yeah, it was
even
really bad.
like your only company that you had was your mom, and that
Yeah.
was working against you.
Yeah.
And then you do this, and you marry into a military spouse situation, and that's difficult. And then I'm sure that is a very lonely experience. Now, is that your current husband now?
No,
No. Okay, so
that
so you're in that state. You're in that state. You're lonely. You're only with your husband here and there. You don't have kids yet, right?
no,
No
thankfully
kids.
didn't have
You
kids.
two didn't have any kids. So what happened with that marriage? Is that anything to do with your eating disorder play into that marriage role at all, or?
It did, because I got healthy because of him, thankfully. But then I developed, um, I guess, a unhealthy relationship with fitness. So he would do PT, and when he was on his days off, we would go for runs, and he would push me. He would push me like I was part of his group.
It
Okay.
was a boot camp, right?
Yeah. So I had this mentality that that's how you work out. You want to get in shape, you want to lose weight, you want to burn fat, whatever. You need somebody yelling at you and pushing you to run up that hill and do it in under X amount of minutes. I remember even after a marriage, I still kept that mentality going. And it was just really, really unhealthy. Things got physical in the marriage. He also didn't come back from war the same. He had PTSD, and it didn't work. And it was sad. It was really
Yeah.
sad, because not only did I go through a horrible life with my mom, then I get into this marriage which started great and then progressed into a very ugly and dark relationship.
How long did
And
that
thankfully I was
marriage?
able to get out.
How long was that marriage?
How long? We weren't married long. I want to say, ooh, you know what? 3, maybe 4 years, maybe
3 or 4
less.
years? Okay, that could be typical. They say that
Yeah.
it's somewhere between 1 to 2 years. Actually, 1 to 2
Yeah.
years, and then after like 7 years is usually where they say it happens. But it could be anywhere which way. Plus, that's a totally different scenario than a lot of married couples being,
Yeah.
being there like that together. So okay, so that ends, and
Yeah.
so now you're when that ends, and how did that end? Was that just your decision? Was that his? Was it just
It had
mutual?
been mine for a long time, and
Okay.
he said no. He said, I don't think so. So when it got physical a couple times, I would run out of the window,
Oh
like the
boy.
bathroom window. It was really ugly. We had cops called, and I don't want to say much. He's a good guy, I'm sure now.
Sure.
We just weren't good together, and he came back really messed up. So I don't blame him the way I know I should.
Mm-hmm.
And I also take fault into it because I know sometimes you're young, you're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how to pick and choose your battles. But that was really bad. It just wasn't healthy. There was cheating, there was lying, and I remember trying to run out, and either he would block the door, and I found a way out through the window, and
Mm-hmm.
we'd get chased around.
Oh
It's
boy.
really bad.
Well, those are
It
the
was very,
signs. Those are signs.
very ugly, very ugly. So I eventually had to find a way to let him feel like it was time to end things, and it wasn't the right way to go about on my end. We were already sleeping in separate rooms. We weren't doing anything. We would show up to family events, his family events, because, in his culture, that's what you do. And I remember we would get back, and it was like, oh, okay. I'd go to the room, and he'd stay on the couch, and sometimes we would swap. But we were done. It was over. And I started dating somebody, and I got really drunk one time, because that's the other thing. I got so heavy into drinking to try and numb. There was so much pain in my life, Mike. I have gone through so much, and sometimes I'm like, how am I smiling, pushing through, and feeling like life is great every day when the shit I went through, I don't think a lot of people could come out
Well,
and say
it
everything's
could,
okay now.
I think,
You
because
know,
we've been connected. I've known you. We've had our chats, over the years, and that stuff shapes you. That's the stuff that makes you who you are today, and you've went through that. And I think underlying, if you ask how are you here today through that, I think there are probably times where you thought you wouldn't be, but that the fact you did make it through, and you have those each one of those traumatic events that you've gotten through and found a way out of, and where you are today, that's like a little badge of honor you could wear right there. Those are little like things like, hey, I did that. I got through that. I did this. And it's all on your own. You process the emotions yourself, and you figure that out, and it's all on you. It's all you. And whether you got help or not, there's help along the way, but eventually you take the reins and you do it. So, that's what's so appealing about this, is that a great conversation is why we were calling this episode about surviving the eating disorders, and that's where you're at here today. So to get back on track, so you leave this marriage, right?
Yeah.
And you're how old are you at this point?
I think I was 22.
Okay, that's really young. So you got married at like
Yeah,
18.
very young. Oh
Okay,
yeah.
super young. Okay. So I
Yeah.
can relate a little bit. My ex-wife and we got together when we were 16 and 17. Didn't get married till later, but it was kind of 23 whole years. So I can relate to, hey, sometimes when you're young, you make these decisions, and they aren't good then, and they don't maybe aren't good now. So I get it.
Yeah.
So you're 22, 23 years old here. Now you've kind of taken on, it's kind of a double-edged thing. You have the eating disorder, but you're also on the other extreme with fitness. And let's talk about that a little bit too. Fitness wise, like this is a thing as well. And if you notice a pattern here, it's extremes what we're dealing with here. These disorders are extremes. You go into hey, I'm not eating anything at all. Or if I do eat, I'm going to purge that into the toilet. And then I'm going to go and run for 6 hours after this. So I burn every damn calorie off that I took. It really will mess with you. So after the marriage, what's life go? How does life progress?
So I stopped going to college, and I started working at a restaurant, and I got my own place, and things were great. Everything was good. I started to gain weight. So I started eating, but it wasn't eating out of enjoyment or eating to be healthy. I just started to eat because I would go out and drink with the coworkers. I had nobody to tell me we got to go run. We have to go work out. It became this little freedom for a bit, but then the alcohol started to control me. So another extreme right there. And it became something that I would either go have a drink or two before work, and go wait tables. I was happy, connecting with people. And then after work, it was like, oh, what a day, that customer that,
Mm-hmm.
and, let's go talk about what happened. And we would go and have drinks. And because the restaurant downstairs was BJ's, we were drinking with the people there. And then we would all just shoot the shit, share stories, and it was fun. But then I would go home and I had just finished drinking. You're drunk, you're not thinking great. And I started to eat whatever was at my house. Or I would stop by the 7-Eleven and I would grab a bunch of snacks, eat everything. Now, things weren't coming out yet. So I started to gain weight. And this one time, I remember stopping by 7-Eleven, and the guy who worked there looked at me and he's like, ooh, you gained some weight. You're getting a little chubby. And I remember standing there paying for my snacks thinking, what? Like,
Who
excuse
says
me?
that? What kind of
And
person
he's
says
like,
that?
yeah, and he looked at me, he's like, yeah, you're getting chubby. And then he looked at my snacks, kind of like judgy. So I remember paying for my snacks. I went home and ate everything and just threw everything back. Everything just came back out. It was just, it just all started all over again.
And there you go, folks. Let this be a short lesson. What you say to somebody, granted, we're all in control of our own selves or in our actions, but you can send somebody into a very bad place through just a few words. One sentence. That's it. Looks like you put on some weight. Why did you say this? Why did this guy say this to this nice young lady here? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, sure, you can maybe hear that and it could take you to another way and it motivates you to go the other way. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. So best thing to do, just encourage, help, or say nothing, right? But anyways,
Yeah.
go on. Sorry,
So
I interject sometimes with those things.
that's okay. So he tells me that, and I just remember thinking, I had been okay for a couple months. It hadn't been that long, but I felt like I was getting better because I wasn't, putting my body through that. And it just all started up again. I went to the gym, or I got myself a membership and tried working out, and I was doing everything wrong. I didn't know what to do. So all I knew was cardio. Then I would buy workout videos and I would do those at home, because when you do those videos, you're jumping, sweating, doing a bunch of shit in under 30 minutes, which is not good for you. It's a bunch of shit in those things. But anyways, I started to hear other people make comments. So even friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, like, oh, wow, look at you've gained some weight. And it was always about my weight. And I know it's because I was very sick and unhealthy. So I'm sure you're going from 90 pounds, maybe even 80 to, 100 and whatever for someone my height. And it's super visible. And just hearing the comments and hearing people say that, I started to get so depressed. And my relationship with food became so unhealthy again. I stopped eating. I was starving again. I lost the weight. I was still drinking, but I lost the weight. And then I started to work out. And this guy, I believe his name is Mike, actually, at the gym, kind of took me under his wing. So he would see
There's a lot of us. There's a lot of us.
He saw me, and he would see me all the time because I'd go every day. And he told me, like, why don't you go into the weight room? And I told him, in there with those guys? I don't think so. And he's like, I think it would benefit you. I see that you just do a bunch of cardio machines and then you leave. And then he said, why don't you let me train you? And I told him, like, I don't want to spend money on a trainer. And he's like, let me do it for free. So whatever he saw in me was either a sad girl who really needed help, and he genuinely loved what he did. And I'm forever grateful to him because I agreed to it. And he would train me at this other gym. And I remember thinking, he's not really helping me. I'm not sweating. Like, he's not pushing me. Like, what's going on? So I would go home, or I would go back to the other gym and get on the treadmill until I was sweating. And then I'm like, okay, now I did a good workout.
Right.
But thanks to him, he really helped me, and little by little gave me courage to go into the weight room. And then the guys in there would be like, here, let me help you with that workout, or here, try this one. And I started to build and develop muscle at this point, and I started to feel good because I started to feel strong and healthy, and just, the compliments people were getting were like, wow, you look great. But it wasn't like, you look skinny, oh, you've gained weight. It was, wow, you look so healthy, you look good. It was a different type of compliment that I've never heard in my life. And that sort of kept me going. And at this point in my life, I had stopped starving, and I had stopped my bulimia. I would sometimes revert back and forth with anorexia.
Sure.
Because sometimes I was like, no, I can't eat. I shouldn't eat. I want to build muscle. I shouldn't eat. And I stayed lean, but it was still unhealthy.
Right.
So I was gaining some muscle, but my body was fighting back and forth with, should I starve? Should I not starve? Should I starve? Should I not starve? So there was days where sometimes I would starve. So I wouldn't eat breakfast. And I guess, people now call it, what is it? Fasting?
Oh, intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
Yeah, we know all about that. But I did
Yeah.
want to say what you said. You said a lot of things right there that were actually so good. I wish I might have to crop that little section out and just put it somewhere, because you literally went and you pinpointed the transition you made out of this food. You still had it lingering, we know. But what we can pinpoint here is that we've just debunked the whole people at the gym are narcissistic egos, assholes who won't help you. But clearly you got the most help in the weightlifting section, where people are afraid to go. And as a woman, that's understandable. And it was men too. But you also kind of came to the realization here that, like, okay, it's not all about, you're getting to that realization, at least, of cardio is not the answer. It's not about sweating. It doesn't matter how much you sweat. It doesn't matter how sore you get. It's about methodical just progress that you're making. And then you've opened yourself up, and now you're realizing that, okay, I don't want to be skinny, I want to be healthy, I want to be fit. That's sort of what so many women, mostly men too, but they just want that toned look, they call it, and they just don't really understand how to get there, or they're so conditioned to believe that this strength training and is all about being jacked, bulky, and egotistical. It's just not true. And you were a great example of it. And it shows right there. Not only physically, but mentally, because you can see right here where you're making the shift from this disordered mindset, from this skinny everything, moving around, running around, eating nothing. Now you're starting to go. You've got the workout changed. Now you got to figure out the food, right? So how do you figure out, because you said you're in there training, and it's not good to be trying to build muscle. You need to be in a calorie surplus. We know this. Yeah. So eventually, you really have to focus on eating. And then to eat, this is the biggest mind flip too for so many, is that you have to flip your brain to where you have to go eat food for the progress that you want. You have to go eat it. So now you're in the gym, you're feeling better, you're looking good, you're still maybe hesitant to eat. What happens next?
Yeah, so I battled with my brain and food quite a bit. So I had a very unhealthy relationship. So my relationship with bulimia was long gone. It was done. And I am forever grateful. But my relationship with anorexia was still, I was in and out, because I felt like it's hard to explain, but I felt like I wanted to be thin, but I wanted to be strong. So I was battling with that, because the guys at the gym were like, oh, try and eat this, make sure that you eat this. So they were giving me tips left and right. And I was like, yeah, okay, thanks. And I would go home and I was like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can. And I would buy the stuff and I would look at it, and I'd sit there in my kitchen thinking, or stand there in my kitchen thinking, this is what they want me to do. I'm not ready to do this. I can't do this. So then I'd put everything back in, and, then the food would go bad. I'd have to throw it out. And then they'd tell me another tip here and there, like, oh, get this, try and, eat this many eggs and try and stick to this. I would buy it. I would look at it. I would make it. And then oh gosh, I remember just thinking, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? When is this going to get better? Because I was feeling good at the gym, and then I would go home for the next however many hours, and I was just battling nonstop with food. So I started eating things that I shouldn't have ate. You know, I'd eat a protein bar for breakfast, a protein shake for lunch, and maybe another protein shake for dinner. And maybe I'd have a little bit here and there. So I was still thin, but I was eating, I guess, more than what I used to because nothing was coming back out. But I just couldn't get to that part of having the meals that I was supposed to have. And then little by little, I would start adding, okay, like I need to have chicken, let me add some rice. So I started with the basic bodybuilding because the guys at the gym were all bodybuilders. So I was doing pretty much a bodybuilding diet and still no breakfast. It was just, you know, my chicken and my rice. Started to add broccoli, and then for dinner, sort of the same thing. And then eventually I added breakfast, but it took a long time.
That's
I
okay.
was, I think, 27, 28 when I finally said I have to eat.
But that's how the process goes. And I don't think that you don't have to feel bad about that. There's nothing wrong with it because that's sort of how it's supposed to be in a lot of senses. You know, if you know, I'm working with somebody and they're eating super low calorie or whatever it is because they're just like 1100, 1200, you know, I'm not going to kick them all the way up to 2500 and put them in a bulk because that's just way too much too fast for them. Not even just for what it does in your body, but just mentally to like take that amount of food on. And when you're doing it right, you're also using foods that are more satiating. They fill you up more. So it's a lot. It's actually can become, and people don't believe this, it's a chore to hit a certain number to go ahead and be in that calorie surplus for that long time. And what we also don't realize is that it's ideal to be in that muscle building, bodybuilding phase for about 75% of the year. And then you're supposed to just cut here and there on a lower calorie diet. And even the low calorie diets aren't as low as some people are trying. And, you know all this now. So when you were there, so you're piecing it together. And while you were starting to do that, was the anorexia coming back in at all? Did that ever rear its head again?
So it finally ended. 27, let's say 27. I might have just turned 27 when it finally ended. So Mike, I've been struggling with an eating disorder since I was 9.
No, 18 years.
I was 9. So I'm 9 years old. I'm already having a bad relationship with food. I am starving myself in my preteens. I am puking my lungs out in high school and then starving and then binge eating because I'm, you know, in a happy place and still not having a good relationship with food. So I had no control or no knowledge of moderation. I was just either not eating or overeating. It was one or the other, or eating and then having everything come out. There was no knowledge on my end on how to eat. And I don't want to say how to eat right because it's food. You eat it, you enjoy it, and you move on. But I had no knowledge on how to eat to feel good. I ate to feel bad. That was literally what was going on. So I turned 27 and I was in the best place of my life. I had help from people at the gym. I had, you know, all the guys at the gym giving me tips, letting me work out with them for free. This guy, Mike, wasn't at the gym anymore. He stayed at the other gym. But if it wasn't for him, and if it wasn't for any of the other people at the gym, I who knows? I don't think I would be where I'm at now. I could have ended up at a hospital because it might have gotten worse, you know?
Yeah, and it's saved your life essentially. And I did an episode with a gentleman named Brian Macbeth, who our title was "How the Gym Saved My Life." And you know, and this is, you know, some people will scoff at that. They'll laugh. They'll think it's some sort of ego trip or some sort of like I don't know, high and mighty type of way to speak, but it's true. And I could say it in a sense of my own self. And I think it's actually true to all of us that, like, in a sense that if you start getting in there, we're supposed to be doing this. We're supposed to be moving. We're supposed to be building muscle. There's studies coming out right now that saying lack of muscle is more of a issue than obesity as far as disease and chronic illnesses. I don't know what the validity. I can't say that word. I don't know why I bother trying. I try all the time, but I don't even know how accurate that is right now. Yeah. So, but just not to get off track, but that's just another one that I wanted to call out there. That's, hey, another person can sit here and say how they can pinpoint the gym playing a huge factor in saving their lives. So, you know, you go in now, you're doing that. So you're kind of, that's the end of the eating disorders there. You get into the fitness lifestyle and then you become a personal trainer at some point, right?
I do later on in life. I worked at different jobs after that, and not many different jobs. I act like I bounced from job to
Sure.
job. It was still the same job for a very long time, and then I added a second one just because I had to now, support myself with the food I was eating.
Oh heck,
So
it's
it
expensive, especially
wasn't.
now. Whew,
Oh yeah.
brutal.
Don't get me started on that.
Oh,
But I had to get this extra job because now I'm buying food that I'm actually eating, and I'm, you know, working out and putting in more work at the gym and seeing a transformation happen that, while I'm in this, I see it, but you don't see it because you're
hmm.
still so critical about your body. So
Yep.
I remember thinking like, eh, I don't know. I don't know. But you hear people telling you you're healthy, you look good, there's
Hmm.
muscle, you have curves, this is great.
Hmm.
And I'm like, in the beginning, I was like, curves, does that mean I'm fat? Because it was still something that wasn't popular like it is
Right.
now.
Exactly.
And I, so anyways, I'm at work. At this point, I think I'm at a clinic. I was there for a while, and I started helping this girl who asked me to help her with her meals and asked, help her work out. She started to lose weight, and I remember thinking, you know, I would like to help more people because the way she felt and this just happiness that I saw in her face, Mike.
Hmm.
She was so happy that her clothes was fitting better. She was so happy that she was still able to eat food and lose weight. It wasn't like, oh, I thought I had to starve. And I remember that right there, it clicked because I remember thinking, if I had help from the very beginning, that in order to get the body you want, you have to fuel it right. You don't have to starve. You don't have to go to the extremes to lose weight and do all the crazy stuff. I think I would have been
Did,
I I would have been fine.
did you ever think that that upbringing you had where you sort of had to kind of keep your emotions in check to yourself and you kind of had to like, hey, not ask for help? Did that deter you, you think, from ever seeking help for any of your eating disorders? Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound like you did reach out for too much help during those years and you kind of did it yourself mostly
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I'm in therapy right now, and I was telling my therapist that yesterday. I told her that I came from a home where my mom, like I said earlier, you figured out how to get out of whatever situation. So if I, had an issue with something, you figure it out. You find a way. You can do it. You're strong, you're capable, we can do this. We can do anything. And I think because of that, I never sought help. So it was
Hmm.
one of those things where like you don't ask for help because according to my mom, it's a sign of weakness.
Right.
And
That's the total opposite because I believe it takes a certain amount of strength to ask
yeah,
somebody for help. You got to develop the courage because it can be humbling. It can, you shove your ego down a little bit for most people to ask for help for something. And I think that's a strength because it is. And I think that whole like ideology that your mom had instilled in that generation, to be fair, still does have. It's like I was I don't know, I've gone to therapy before, I've many times, and it can be met with people thinking it's just for crazy people, or like medication meds. There's like meds.
right.
I'm not on any yet at any point, but who knows what we might need. And some of them are beneficial and they do level people out. And
Mhm.
people call them crazy pills. Like, no, like let's
Yeah,
let's realize that there's a lot more here to a human being than just getting up, working, and doing things for 60 years and then passing away.
right.
We have a lot of emotions, a lot of mental thoughts and perceptions and conditioning and traumas that kind of come and just develop who we are, and we react different, we perceive different. It's why we have so much miscommunication, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I hear you on that. And then so today now you're married now, right, with
Yeah.
kids?
Two
And
kids.
two kids. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. And I have two myself. Ironically, what strikes me with your story is that this began for you at 9. My oldest daughter of my two daughters is 9 years old now. So I can, like, after, you told me about this, and I just, during this episode, even I was thinking of what would it be like if I was saying those things to my daughter. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't. I truly couldn't. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And before I do ask about, kids, our kids and the next generation, your mom, your relationship with your mom now, what is that like at this point?
So it's funny you ask. She called me on Monday and she needed a favor. And I was going to pick her up yesterday. And the entire week, Mike, that threw me off.
Mhm.
And I even talked to my therapist yesterday about that. And I told her how I just felt this. I don't know what I was feeling. I just felt I
You did
wasn't
see her?
connecting.
You did see
No, and
her
I
on
didn't.
Monday? You didn't see her.
No,
Okay. But
thankfully I
she
didn't.
called you though.
So she
Okay.
canceled. She ended up canceling, but I lost sleep over it. I felt more irritable. My anxiety tripled. It was really bad. And she, even talking to her, Mike, I just sometimes don't know what to feel because I don't have an emotion towards her.
Right.
And if, I called my sister and I told her, look, I can't be alone with my mom. And you want me to pick her up because you can't. And I don't know. I don't know. I told her, I'm very straightforward, Mike. If there's one thing
Mhm.
about me, is that you're gonna know the truth because I don't know how to hide shit.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I'm the
that's probably why I
same.
have like 5 friends.
Yeah. That's what
Because
I
I'm
hear
too
you.
honest.
I'm too honest for my own good. I hear you. But I don't
Yeah.
want to, I don't want to change. So I get
Yeah,
it.
it's a good thing, but
Right.
not everyone knows how to take that.
Mm-mm.
So all I kept thinking was, shit, we're gonna be in the car together. My kids are gonna be in the back. She's only met my kids maybe, or been around my kids a handful of times, maybe twice.
Mm.
And I just kept thinking, like, my kids are gonna be in there, and what if I start asking her questions? Because I don't know how to not ask questions, and I don't know how to stay quiet. And if I stay quiet, she's gonna maybe ask me something, and I might just say something that I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it turned out thankfully I didn't have to see her. I know I might see her soon. She'll be at my sister's, but when my sister's around us, everything feels safe.
It's like the
And
buffer.
I
She's
and
the
I
buffer.
think that's because of how we grew up. When my sister was around, everything felt okay. My mom was happy. If she wasn't around, I was so scared to even be around my mom
Mm.
because I didn't want to hear her say anything about my food or my eating or my body and how I looked or that I wasn't doing anything. So it was, if my sister's around, I feel good, put it that way. So I didn't see her. I know I might have to see her soon, but my relationship with her is still non-existent.
Do you think it's salvageable at any point?
I'm working on that.
Okay. Well,
I'm
that's
working on
good.
that.
That might, I don't know, because that's sometimes peace, and if you could put something away that like you'd said, though, that anxiety that threw your week off and all of that. I don't know. It's a two-way street, though. It's not
Yeah.
just you. You can't just, put yourself back in a position of being abused again.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way thing. There'd have to be some eye-opening maybe on her end. Again, we can't go any further on that here just because we don't know. But
I
I hope it
know.
works for you. So it just, it comes full circle in a way, and improvements are made, but it's a tough nut to crack, those older generation
Oh, yeah.
to make a change. So I'm sure she's probably in that close to that boomer generation, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit more. So I get it. I see that. And again, I feel terrible that you had to endure that. And that's all I can say is, you've shown a lot of strength. You're a good example, great example of that. So I want to know now, we both have kids, like we said. I have two girls. You have one of each, or you
A
have
boy and a girl,
boy and a
yeah.
girl? Okay. So what do we do? Because boys are still susceptible for this kind of stuff. It's not just women.
And they suffer through it more.
They suffer through it even more because it feels as if, like, wow, we have to, like, we can't talk, we can't speak,
Mhm.
we have to be men, we have to be strong, we have to be
Yeah.
masculine, we can't show. There's still a lot of that on our end as men, where you're just, I've been, you show your emotions, and there's still men out there who'll call you a pussy, they'll call you a bitch, they'll call you this or that, and it's like, you know what, I kind of over that, because yeah, you got to be strong at times, but also, holding in your emotions and not putting them out there, that's not masculine. It's masculine in itself, just to be.
Yeah.
That's part of being masculine to me, is being comfortable enough in your masculinity that you could show your emotions and do that.
Yeah.
But with
You
our
have to be
kids,
vulnerable.
right. But with our kids, what can we do and what do you do? And I'll kind of share what I do, because I do struggle sometimes with making sure that I don't give them anything, any type of eating issue.
Yeah.
But I also don't want them to completely just think that they can have at it and go nuts and
Mhm.
just eat fruit roll-ups, gushers, and potato chips. So, so what is
Yeah.
it? What can we do basically for us, and then for any parents listening to this that may be wondering about their kids' diet and how to approach it the right way without developing an eating disorder? What's the best approach? What do you think?
So well, what's worked for me is not labeling food as good or bad, not talking about you being in a diet or whatever, even if it's a healthy thing, like, oh, I'm in a surplus, I gotta eat this amount of stuff. My kids never hear me say I am in a deficit, I can't eat that, I'm in a surplus, I have to eat all, this amount of food and it makes my stomach hurt. They don't hear any of that. And I'm very, very careful with that because of what I went through. And what I do is when I eat something, when I'm eating breakfast, I'll usually say it out loud, like, oh, I'm gonna have eggs and chicken and a piece of toast. And you gotta have your macros. I'm kind of teaching her about macros,
Mm-hmm.
healthy fats and some good source of protein and carbs and blah blah blah. And I'll tell her, like, this gives me energy, this helps my body, this is going to make me feel so much better after my workout and give me energy for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll hear her sometimes tell me, like, oh mom, I'm hungry, I need some energy.
Oh, good.
But to her, when she eats, it's to get energy. It's not because it's going to make her fat. It's not because she's going to eat something good or healthy. And I put that in quotes. And even when they do get treats, it's like, oh, here you go, let's have this. And if she's, kids are kids, they're going to ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
So can I have more? I'll let her know, it's not good if we have more because it might make your stomach hurt and it might make you feel super tired. What if we go
Mm-hmm.
outside? Let's play. If you still want some, then I'll give you another one.
Yeah.
So I don't deprive them from it. I also won't give them a full. I might give them like a half of another cookie, let's say,
Sure.
if she does want more, which usually she does.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll still give it to them. I'll give them half
Sure.
because I think having a healthy relationship with food is so important when it comes to, how you grow up, because our lives, it's surrounded by food.
Oh, yeah.
Parties, restaurants,
All the
hanging out with
time.
friends, hanging out with whatever. Food will always be part of it.
Right.
And if we start telling our kids that we are dieting, I can't eat bread, or this is bad, or that's, good for you and you should only eat that, that's already bad.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
already, you're going to fail. And your kids are always going to hear that and say, oh, we're going to grow up and they're going to be like, you know what? I want bread, but mommy thinks bread is bad. So let me hide it and take it into the room so she doesn't see me eating.
Yep.
Because that's what kids do. They hide
I've
things.
seen, yeah, my
They'll
daughter
hide
has,
things.
I'll put out there, once my daughter did that with some potato chips, because, I regulate it sometimes, and maybe I
Yeah.
made a mistake. Maybe that's where I'm coming even into this episode here with just with little questions myself, just to make sure that, I never did anything in the form of shaming, scolding, or any of that, or fear-based anything. Just like, hey, you know what, let's have some fruit here first, and then you'll have your
Yeah.
potato chips after that, see if you're still hungry,
Yeah.
things like that. But at the same time, it's more of a, I'm afraid dad's going to say no thing, or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's kind of like that. So it's
And
tough.
and you have to teach them because so the one thing that I had growing up is I was afraid to ask my mom anything, or I knew I couldn't go to her because I knew that it would piss her off. So with my kids, what I try to do is, you got to tell me it's okay.
That's what I
And,
do.
how do you feel? Or sometimes when they're eating something, I'll ask her, like, or she'll say, like, oh gosh, mommy, that was so good, but I think I ate too much of it because my
Hmm.
stomach hurts. Or
Okay.
sometimes she's in the middle of a cookie and she'll give it back to me. And she's like, mom, I think the sugar, I think it's too much sugar for me. And I'm looking
Yeah.
at her like,
That
okay,
my little one
because
does
I
that
want to
too.
know,
Yeah.
I try to tell her how something might make you feel. And I like to tell
Right.
her, like, okay, here's your cookie. Just know that this is sugar. It's going to make you feel happy, but it might also make your tummy hurt a little bit. So if your tummy
Hmm.
hurts, just,
Slow it
let's
down.
put it away and you can have it again tomorrow.
Right. And I'll occasionally
So,
do that, similar to that myself.
yeah.
Like, even with just like food, we do this. I still do this, like when you're still eating. but you didn't give that time for your body to register it being full.
Yeah.
So like, and it's a typical kid thing, and
Mhm.
adults do it too. Hey, I'm
Yep.
still hungry. Can I have something else? I'll be like,
Yeah.
hold on, give it 5 minutes. If you
Yeah.
still want it, I'll give it to you in 5 minutes. Just give it 5 minutes. Okay. And then it's usually 50-50. Either she'll be
Yeah.
like, no, you know what? I am full. Or, "Oh, yeah, okay, I said I do want it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, at least
I
you ate
like
it.
to tell them, my kids do the same thing too. And I always tell my daughter, can you have some water? Because I
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
seen you drink water. So she'll tell me like, oh, but I had water. And
Mm.
I'm like, I didn't see you. It's been a few hours. And you know what? Water is medicine. And and
Yeah.
I'll go down like the list of like what our bodies are made of. And and of course, if you're not familiar with some of that stuff, then the best thing to do is just to let them know, like, drink some water. So, we can fill up our bellies with some water first, and then you can have some more. Because
Right.
sometimes you're right. Even for myself, I'll eat something and then I'm like, I want something, but I know I'm full. I
Right.
just want to taste it. So sometimes she'll have a bite and then she'll give it back to me and tell me, like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it. I'm good.
Right. This is all
But
she wanted was a taste of it. And that's fair. That's not a bad
yeah.
balance in some sense. And she realized, she said, hey, I don't actually want this. It's kind of a learning experience in its own way. And speaking of water, somehow I don't know how it even happened in this house, but my daughters are only drinking water right now. Like my one daughter used to always be on milk, which is fine, but
Yeah.
that's fine. My other one used to have lemonade. Like this is the splash sweetener stuff, the Mio or whatever that was.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
but like by no, and I used to be fine with it, but like I was a little kind of concerned just because like all the liquid that was going into her body was brushing sweetness over her taste buds.
Yeah.
So it felt like it was conditioning that a bit. But out of nowhere, I think we just stopped buying it. Juice boxes uh we never really had juice boxes in the house, but like things like that. And then now it's just defaults to water. Like they have water bottles, they got ones they like, and they just can I have water? That's it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how'd I do that? That's great. But
Yeah, and see, that's good. And I
they
always tell
know.
people, even for yourself, I mean, I love sweets. So if I have sweets at the house, I'm gonna eat them. So what I have to do is I have to make sure that I don't buy certain things because I'll lose control.
Oh
That
yeah.
is my weakness. I will devour an entire sleeve,
Mm.
and I don't care.
It
Yet
happens. Nope.
sometimes
It's
you gotta
addicting
watch
too. Some
yourself.
of those foods are actually or not genetically, but like scientifically engineered
Yes.
to be addictive. So you keep eating. They know what they're
Mhm.
doing for profit here because
Oh yeah.
you could eat an entire bag of chips in a day, but are you going to really eat like 5 potatoes in a day? That's in a that's what a bag of chips is made of.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, and it's kind of like you can be so full, and I've talked about this before too. And then that's when you're at a restaurant and they bring the dessert menu out, and then it's like I'm full as hell, but yeah, I'll look at that. Okay, let's order it. And you can still have room for that taste, man. It's
Yeah.
there. All right, so I guess that's really it. I think we could kind of say like, that's an amazing story, and I thank you for sharing that. That's I'm really happy that you did, and I hope you feel good about it, about everything. You should feel great about yourself for everything you've done and overcame. It's a wonderful story to show, on all kinds of events, to tell somebody. And I hope they can listen to this and somebody, can learn something about how to maybe prevent a disordered eating path that they're on, that their kids might be on. And then they can just use this as a tool to like realize that. And then to contact you, is Instagram best? Is that correct?
Instagram is
So
the
Yolie is on Instagram. It's at body by Yolie _. So that's body by Yolie, YOLIE _. I'll throw that in the show notes also. So if you want to talk to her about personal training, coaching of any kind, or disordered eating, she's a great person to talk to and very friendly and open to those chats. So anything else you want to say before I sign us off here, in closing at all?
Yes. If you don't have anything nice to say to someone, don't say it at all, because a lot of people are suffering, and they are suffering very quietly, and a lot of us don't even know. And you might say something that could just, bring them down a very dark path.
Or
And
push them right off the edge.
yeah, so, try and just spread positivity, just be nice. Just say hi to someone.
Mhm.
I think we live in a world where people are so focused on the phone and what they're looking at, that
Yeah.
they don't want to engage with people anymore. They don't want to talk to people. It's
Mhm.
really sad.
It
So
is.
be nice, You know, if you don't have anything nice to say it, whether it's on social media or in person, don't say it.
Yes.
It's don't.
Perfect. That's true. And that kind of comes down to the, the root of your story there. Someone saying something to you that they shouldn't have, and multiple times throughout your story, with the between your mom, the friends, the guy at the convenience store. It's just all keep quiet. It's driving people out the wrong way, and it could have all been avoided just by saying something nice, just by being kind. I could take, I'm not perfect either. I'm doing better, but I gotta be nice for myself too. We can all be nicer. I try to be a very nice guy, but
Yeah.
all right. So that was a good convo. I greatly appreciate you being here. I'm sure we'll do another one down the road because this has been great. Again, I just gave Yolie's contact. I'll put that in the show notes if you want to get a hold of me. I'm Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Twitter. I'm back everywhere now at MFS Wellness. Can't get enough of that social media. It's a drug in itself, right? Positive and negatives to that. And then email as well. I still use that. It's mike@mfswellness.com. I do have a website that's up and running now. It's just mfswellness.com. If you want to check that out, if you haven't yet, you can contact me through there every which way. So for Yolie, I am Mike, and we will talk to you on the next episode.